get all my junk up.
I will add a stone in joy for my recovery from bunion surgery, hence my gimping around here today. My joy is that I'm about to get into a driving boot. So I have been unable to drive since the 12th of December, and I'm very grateful for all of my family and wonderful friends who have helped me out, and one of my dear friends, Dottie, is here today. She is my chauffeur. It's always good to be with you. And this morning I want to talk about the topic of hospitality. I will begin with a reading. It is a Hasidic tale written by Rabbi Chaim Stern. On a terrible night, Rabbi Aaron of Karlin came to a village which had only one Jewish residence. He looked and asked for shelter there, but was not recognized. They took a long time deciding whether to admit him, and when he finally proved his identity, he was admitted, half frozen, and then well entertained. He later said this about that experience. "It is plain to me why the sages in the Talmud say that it is of more merit to be hospitable to human beings than to God. When the divine presence finds your door barred, it returns to heaven, and you, the unwilling host, are the only one who suffers. With people, it is different. If you don't let them in, they may perish." At some point in our lives, most of us have been like Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, vulnerable and in need of the kindness of strangers. For me, one of those times came when I was a lonely nursing student in Wisconsin, and it was frigid winter. I'd been in the big city. I was a small town girl, longing for my family, who were 3 hours to the north. So I set off at dusk, with the snow lightly falling, in my ancient 1964 Buick Skylark, which I had dubbed Flutterby because she had a flutter in her drive shaft. I was fighting Friday night traffic on the expressway in Milwaukee. Driving in the left lane, I suddenly lost power, and I saw a large puff of black smoke come out of my muffler. I knew that I had to get to the right shoulder, but the semi-truck behind me in the right lane wouldn't pass, nor would he merge left. So I finally darted into the right lane and onto the shoulder, just as my engine died. The truck driver that I had earlier been cursing because he wouldn't pass me, hospitably pulled over onto the shoulder to help me. He was able to get my car started, and off I went. I drove another 2 hours without incident until I was getting off the expressway to take a state route. Same scenario, except this time I was in the middle of an intersection, trying to turn left off of an expressway exit. This time, 2 college students provided the hospitable kindness of strangers. They pushed my car into a gas station, and the attendant was able to get Flutterby resurrected yet again. Homesickness for hearth and home is a powerful motivator, perhaps an insane one. So driven by that need, I got back into that car and drove another 45 minutes before Flutterby finally sputtered her last for that trip and died on a hill about 30 miles from my home. This time, the hospitable one was a man employed by Wisconsin Power and Light. We were unable to get Flutterby to start again. My kind stranger said, "The company says I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to take you home. I'm not supposed to do it, but I can't leave you here in this bitter cold. Trust me, his warm truck felt like heaven, and his hospitality felt almost miraculous. How does one lonely college student get multiple experiences of hospitality in one night? You will probably think it's because I was a young woman and the men just wanted to rescue a damsel in distress. Could be. But the meaning I made of it was that it was profound hospitality. These men all knew that if they passed me by, I would be in peril. So they extended hospitality to a stranger, and they helped me. Hospitality is an age-old religious concept and practice. It was imperative in ancient cultures because people's very survival depended upon strangers helping them. One was expected to extend hospitality to a stranger who came to one's doorstep or tent flap because the environment was harsh and brutal and resources scarce. While our physical environment is not quite so unforgiving today, our culture struggles to maintain a human community that gives everyone an equal chance to survive and thrive. Particularly in the United States, it seems like the things that divide us and have created an angry, fearful, fractious culture are legion. Those forces and people that would unify us to make the world a more hospitable place seem in short supply. But people of faith have a rich resource in the spiritual practice of hospitality to help bring more peace and unity into our world. I call hospitality a spiritual practice because it is ultimately about all of our spirits connecting with the spirit of another and gathering that other in or going to where that other is. Hospitality comes from the Latin word that means friendliness to guests. Meanings of the word hospitable are disposed to treat guests and strangers with generosity and warmth, cordiality extended toward guests, having an open mind, receptive, favorable to growth and development, or agreeable. Now I want you just to listen to these synonyms for the word hospitable. And I want you to think about what feelings do these words engender in your heart and in your mind. Welcoming, kind, friendly, gracious, sociable, genial, bountiful, receptive, open-minded, and responsive. I want you to continue listening now to the antonyms, the opposite of hospitable. Stark, wild, desolate, bleak, windswept, God-forsaken, barren, and hostile. What feelings do those terms engender in your hearts and your minds? When we think of other words with the same root as hospitality, we think of hospital or hospice. At their best, hospitals can be places of healing, hope, and safety. At their best, hospices are places of comfort, relief of pain, and profound support in a transition time that is very holy. My work and ministry is as a chaplain in a hospital, as Kathy shared with you. I feel called to be the bringer of hospitality to the patients that I serve. When I'm very focused and attentive to the spirit of life, I know that I must do my work with an open heart and mind. When I walk into a patient's room, we are two total strangers meeting for the very first time. I know that patients and their families are vulnerable because they are in very foreign territory. So, one of the most important things that I do is bring friendliness to the guests at Mayo by offering them a smile, going to them in their vulnerability and their anxiety, and gathering them into my heart by extending kindness, time, and deep listening. Sometimes that hospitality takes more concrete forms when I provide them with a warm flannel blanket from the blanket warmer, and I know where all of them are on the units that I serve. Or juice for distraught family members, or direction to visitors to the bathroom or the chapel. It also takes the form of respect, knocking before I enter their room, asking them if I may sit and visit, and accepting the bottle of water that they may offer me. It always humbles me to know that patients have a need to extend hospitality to me when I come into their private space, their temporary home, if you will. I'd like to tell you two stories that illustrate how important it is to bring the sense of hospitality to those in the hospital. One of my patients had leukemia, and his two daughters lived many states away. The patient was hospitalized for a long time as he underwent treatment and ultimately had a stem cell transplant for his leukemia. It was heart-wrenching for his daughters when they had to leave their father and mother because his clinical condition was so uncertain. When I assured them that I would be regularly visiting their father and supporting their mother, I could see them visibly relax. One of them told me that knowing I was following their father closely allowed her to be less anxiety and guilt-ridden as she left his side. Both daughters knew that I had gathered in their parents in their time of distress. They both called me at different points in time to ask me to particularly be attuned to certain needs that they saw in either their father or their mother. Another situation involved the parents of a 13-year-old boy. This young man had shot himself and lay dying in the pediatric intensive care unit. Whenever a child harms himself or herself, accidentally or intentionally, parents are often seen as somehow culpable until proven otherwise when they bring their beloved injured child to the emergency room. This is an added and hideous trauma to parents with a child who is mortally wounded. And so these parents, who had been neither neglectful nor abusive, were suffering intensely. When I was called to that room, my heart and soul connected deeply with the parents' anguish. I experienced what Henry Nouwen called hospitality of the heart, an opening of my heart so that the contents of my heart and the contents of those broken-hearted parents merged. Inside I was screaming, how on earth can I, as a chaplain, make such a horrific time and place in any way more bearable? After my panic subsided and I took a few very deep breaths, I heard the spirit of life, my nobler self, say to me, you stand firm in love. You pray for wisdom. You make yourself totally available to these parents. You listen deeply for what they need. You ask the nurse to make room on the bed so that the mother can lie with her son. You suspend all judgments. You use words sparingly because you know they are so futile. Now, I wasn't thinking consciously about how to make it more hospitable, but I was yearning and longing with all of my heart and mind and body to somehow be a kind, compassionate person whose only agenda was to be a person of refuge and safety for these parents in their worst nightmare. With the Spirit's help, and let me be very clear, only with the Spirit's help, I was able to do what I so longed to do. The father later told me that the most powerful thing that I did when I entered his son's room excuse me, was to be totally non-judgmental. This young man's mother cannot remember much of that night, but she still keeps in contact with me. I, in fact, got a Christmas card from them this season. Their son died over 5 years ago. I had dinner with her last Valentine's Day, and I was always glad to know that I was not too painful a reminder of that horrific event. I always worry about that when I get together with this young man's mother. On the contrary, she tells me that I am a very redemptive and critical connection to her son because I was there when he died. I was the one who did his funeral, and I was the one who interred his ashes. Through all of those unbearably painful events, I learned about the fullness of their son's life, not just the end of it. With guidance from the Spirit of life, my pastoral presence helped make those painful moments bearable. In both of these situations, people are dependent upon the kindness of strangers to make terrible situations somehow less noxious. One writer says, "The milk of human kindness should be brought fresh to the table every morning." When I am at my best as a chaplain, I go into the hospital with this intention, to bring fresh milk of human kindness to the tables of my patients and their families for that day. I love the metaphor because, you see, I'm a dairy farmer's daughter. Hospitality is a spiritual imperative in most of the world's religions. Within Judaism, it is a religious obligation to bring strangers in and care for them. The classic Jewish figure of Abraham is the figure of hospitality when he invites 3 strangers, actually angels that he was unaware of, into his tent in Mamre. He doesn't just give them shelter. He, of course, sends Sarah to provide a large, lavish meal for them and quenches their thirst. It is also considered an act of loving kindness, a mitzvah, to give hospitality to others. The expectation is that whatever one gives, it should be given with an open heart. Thus, if one gives too much and is resentful, and haven't we all been in that place, it doesn't quite meet the standard of being true hospitality. Similarly, in Islam, people are expected to offer what they can without lavishness so that the guests do not experience the harried frustration of a host who has worn herself out to make the guests feel welcome. The Prophet Muhammad describes hospitality as a symptom of faith. Hospitality is also fundamental in the Hindu culture. Providing food and shelter to a needy stranger is the duty of a householder. An unexpected guest is to be treated as God. No matter how poor one is, you must give sweet words, a place to sit, and refreshments. At the very least, a glass of water. Within Christianity, the expectations related to hospitality parallel those of their Jewish roots. Jesus tells his disciples not to take money or supplies with them when they go out to do his work. Instead, they are to find a worthy person and stay in their house. The Greek word for hospitality used in the New Testament is philoxenia, or the love of strangers. Another understanding of hospitality is that it makes people feel that they are not strangers. Rather, hospitality makes them feel like they belong. Echoing Judaism and Hinduism, this Christian Gaelic rune reminds us that we entertain angels unaware when we are hospitable to strangers. I saw a stranger yestreen, I put food in the eating place, I put drink in the drinking place, I put music in the listening place. And in the blessed name of the Triune, he blessed myself and my house. And the lark said in her song, often, often, often goes the Christ in the guise of a stranger. As UUs, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We also believe that we are all part of an interdependent web of being. Some UUs would even say that there is that of God in each person. So indeed, if we are living our UU principles, we will treat each person as if they were God or divine. We must even pray, or we might even pray with Rabbi Chaim Stern these words: from the delusion that any one of us can be a stranger on this earth, the cradle of us all, deliver us. An Episcopalian writer says, we understand hospitality best by reflecting on the most profound moments of hospitality that have been offered to us. Most likely the acts of hospitality that stand out in our memory are those that were simple and genuine. They may not have had any connection whatsoever to do with food or shelter or drink. They may simply be moments when another person unexpectedly gathered us into their circle of friendship, or accepted us as we are, or loved us in spite of ourselves. I began this sermon this morning by telling you a story of a lonely college student, 4 strangers, and a frigid winter night. I would encourage you now to think about experiences of hospitality that you have had in your own life, because they have the most potency for you, not my stories, but your stories. I would ask you to think about those times when you've experienced that kind of hospitality, because if you remember that, that gives you the potential and the opportunity to replicate those feelings and those experiences of hospitality with someone else who may desperately need it. Take a few minutes and remember when you had such experiences of hospitality extended to you. And I want you to think about these questions. When have you felt truly accepted? When have you felt truly welcomed? And when have you been so blessed by someone's hospitality that your own heart overflowed with gratitude? I understand the spiritual practice of hospitality to also be the practice of kindness. Donna Markova, in her book, The Random Acts of Kindness, says, the practice of kindness is the daily, friendly, homely, caring form of love. It is both humble, a schoolboy's bouquet of dandelions that he brings to his school teacher, and exalted, a fireman giving his life to save someone. Kindness is love with hands and hearts and minds. It is both whimsical, causing our faces to crack into a smile, and deeply touching, causing our eyes to shimmer with tears. And its miraculous nature is such that the more acts of kindness we offer, the more of them we have to give. For acts of kindness are always drawn from the well of endless love. End of quote. Whenever I think of strangers, those strangers who helped me, those 4 men, on that wintry night, it was 40 years ago, I smile and I feel the warmth of their hospitality, and it seems like it was yesterday. The hospitality of those 4 men helped me, a young 20-something college student, trust that the world can be a friendly, kind place. Such is the spiritual power of hospitality. We all have our private hearths to tend in our homes, and many of us practice hospitality very well in those private places. But we also have collective, your church, and communal public hearths to tend, the public square, the libraries, our legislature. Let us tend them carefully with hospitality and kindness. Let us remind ourselves and help others learn that the world can be a kind and friendly place. May we join with John Angel James, a congregational minister who wrote these words in 1830. Kindness is the visible expression of feeling, a feeling and merciful heart. It is the going forth of a tender and susceptible mind. It claims kindred with the human race. It is all ear to listen. It is all heart to feel, all eye to examine and weep, all hand and foot to relieve. It invites the sufferer with words and sends them not away empty. End of quote. So please, practice the spiritual gift of hospitality. Our survival as a peaceful, just, and compassionate people depends upon it. Our very survival. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you, Kathleen. Let's stand if you're able and sing. Come sing a song.
Heart
church provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, provide inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual pursuits.
And now may the love that overcomes all differences, that heals all wounds, that reconciles all who are separated, and puts to flight all fears, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen.